Well, in case you missed it, it started off slow, picked up a little steam, very evenly matched, back and forth, back and forth. So much so that it's still going on. Yes, they're tied 2-2 at the top of the 10th of the American League wildcard game. There was also a VP debate last night. I hope somebody watched it. Pence versus Timmy starts now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
I can't believe that stupid game didn't end, so I had already pre-written what I was going to say, and I'm like, it didn't end. Anyway, welcome to Trump versus Hillary. Here we are after the one, the only, thankfully, vice presidential debate. Trump versus Hillary. Make sure that you follow us on Twitter at TrumpHillary16. And of course, like us, share, comment on YouTube, rate us on iTunes, all that good stuff. I'm Christian Bladt at ChristianDMZ. To my left, for those watching on YouTube, it's our Mexican thing, Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia. Do I continue and say that that's our black thing next to it? I don't know. We'll see. I'll just say it's Drexel Heard at Drexel Heard. And back from the great wasteland of Florida, Scott Moore at SMan80. Also from the great wasteland of Florida, on the couch of dissent where he belongs.
That's right.
Stephen Helmkamp.
Hello.
At Stephen Helmkamp. Stephen, I watched the debate here with the rest of the gang, but I didn't watch it with you. So I'm going to let you start. What did you think? Highs, lows, all across the board. What did you think?
I wanted to be in my own little dissent bubble, watching it privately. Thank you very much.
That's so funny because he was the one that interrupted all of us last time with ridiculous questions, and we were, or I felt
While
like
we were
everything.
watching?
I don't know that they were ridiculous. He just he posed questions.
Oh, I like to keep the conversation going a little bit.
But because of that, we did have the closed captioning on this time, which would have helped probably.
Hey,
last
there we
time.
go.
But anyway, so you're in your little dissent bubble.
Yeah, I mean, I think for this debate, there was a lot of talk about how a lot of Americans are maybe watching a little bit of it, might not be tuning in, and that we are hopefully going to see some substance on policies. That each candidate should also go in and reinforce the doubts about the top ticket people of the opposing parties. But I was surprisingly surprised with these two VPs. I actually thought the debate was a lot of fun. I thought it was great.
I thought it was a lot more interesting than I expected. I mean, I joked last week that we'd be lucky to stay awake during it, but no, I think that they got a little policy in, but it was a lot. It felt more like an episode of Divorce Court, kind of. But at the same time, they actually talked about some things that matter, which you can argue you maybe didn't get from the presidential debate. So,
yeah.
Chelsea, what did you think? Just general. We'll get into specifics. Don't worry.
Also pleasantly surprised. I was struck by how prepared Tim Kaine looked. I had never really seen him speak.
Most of America had also never seen him speak, so that's all right.
And I was also struck by the fact that Mike Pence could not, for the life of him, answer a question, which is why I started to type down every single question in response, because 2 minutes would go on, and I would think, wait, wasn't this about North Korea? And we were on, emails or something. So that's probably my quick overall sense.
I think the moderator, Elaine Quijano? Am I even close on that? I don't know. I'm very, very, very white. like both of our VP candidates.
Can we get comments?
I think we get the comments from the YouTube chat. Thank you, because I meant to ask for that beforehand, and I would have remembered in the middle of the show, but we always like to hear, so if you're watching live, make sure you comment, and we'll try and include you in the conversation. I thought that she did a above-average job on a few occasions. I do think she let them talk over each other and wander off topic. But what she did well was get them back and be like, yeah, but this was a question about North Korea. Right, but this was a question about North Korea. And they both did it. So I think that was good. People like to say that these moderators are biased. I think that she held both of them accountable, tried to tell both of them, it's the other guy's time.
I feel like she only did that like one time for Kaine.
Wow.
I feel like Kaine interrupted Pence after every policy question, any question. I felt like she would not shut Kaine up, but when Pence would try to interject, which he hardly did this whole debate, I felt like she would say, Governor, hey, keep it down over there.
I think Stephen's right that Tim Kaine did interject a lot, but let's let the other half of the desk weigh in on your thoughts.
I said earlier that is my mic on?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
I said earlier that
Was that a Donald Trump joke?
it was. I could barely hear myself.
Everybody's saying that Drexel had a faulty microphone.
That it's clear. We were like, well, where's Stephen? He seems to be on screen debating Tim Kaine because he can't seem to answer a question. So I don't know if Stephen actually watched the same debate that we did, but I believe that Elaine's "Gentlemen, Please" was directed at Tim Kaine.
Several times.
So I thought the debate was fine. It was, that's always my general, it was fine. I thought that Mike Pence won on style. I think if it's about a look of a president, a look of a vice president.
Really? That's
in terms of style. In terms of substance and actual policy and actually defending the top of the ticket, Tim Kaine did that tenfold, and Mike Pence obviously could not handle every.
Right. If you're saying that the objective is for the VP to stand by their candidate and support their points, I would say Tim Kaine did that a lot more. It was a little bit more difficult for Mike Pence. Not that he didn't at times. It was a lot of.
No, he didn't at all. I think that. I don't think that at any single point that Mike Pence.
I mean, you might disagree with him, but he said, he said, of course he knew about Russia.
So you think that's an actual defense?
I'm just saying.
Mike Pence
was making excuses for him, so that's kind of defending him.
Mike Pence took what we like to call the Kellyanne Conway approach to answering questions on national television.
She was great on Family Feud.
She was great on Family Feud. You get asked a question, you make up some mumbo jumbo about something else, and then you pivot to Hillary Clinton. But you don't actually talk about your candidate because the Trump campaign, once again, as usual, from campaign manager on down, cannot seem to defend their own candidate on policy, on style, on anything, and that's what Mike Pence's job was.
Your thoughts?
Well, I was going to say because they can't.
Right.
That's why. And I will say exactly. I do agree with you 100% on that. I do think if it was a look and everything, Pence definitely had that down. But that's like I said, he's a generic politician.
Why?
Look.
Because he was smiling.
No, I thought his nodding and everything was rude. I'm just saying just on that. But as far as policy, Tim Kaine was way more prepared.
Like white guys with the same hairstyle. So
I was saying.
Let's go finish his point.
I was saying on the political sort of swagger. Like Tim Kaine to me is a little more folksy and
he's very calm, soft spoken, mild mannered.
And Pence has that political politician that's super polished because he was talking about Trump not being polished. I was like, you are the most polished one around. So I guess, in that sense, it's a good balance. But it was clear Tim Kaine had that policy down. He had it down. He knew what he was talking about. And it was too hard for Pence to be able to defend Trump because there is nothing to defend there. And
let me just throw in from the chat room, T. Michael Rodriguez felt that the moderator was a little unfair towards Mike Pence. And I essentially agree with you guys in terms of the fact that Kaine did a much better job of getting the policy out there and actually standing up for his candidate. But what he did not do well was avoid looking like a dick because he interrupted Pence very unnecessarily many times. And my wife texted me during it. I really dislike both of them.
Right.
And I think to the extent that we're talking about, these are a couple of different white guys that most people don't know about. I feel like they probably should have occasionally put their name at the bottom of the screen because I do legitimately, not even as a joke, I think a lot of people watching didn't know which one was which. And it really confused.
I
was going to say, Kaine had a red tie. And Pence had a blue tie. Well, that's not going to help us.
Right.
You're working against us.
Until the North Korea topic came up, Elaine did not stop Kaine from interjecting on Pence. The entire debate.
It's not true.
That's not true.
Pence waited his fair turn. If he ever interjected, she was on him. And I felt like his microphone was even louder than his. Talking about some microphone checks.
Here's the thing.
I say that sidearm. But I feel like Pence. Hold on one second. Let me finish. I feel like Pence had so many accusations thrown at him from Kaine that he wanted to respond to all of those. So he didn't have a whole lot of time, but I feel like he did cover his immigration policies. I feel like he did cover some foreign policies. And I felt like his job tonight was to go and reinforce doubt of Hillary Clinton. And I felt like Mike Pence did that. And I feel like Tim Kaine did that on Trump. So I feel like that was their job as well.
To that point, I do think that they both had moments where they were very successful in that. But in general, I think, when you're using style points, I think that Pence just came off better because, we remember the Joe Biden-Paul Ryan debate that Joe Biden essentially won, but he also shook his head and smirked a lot, and he was definitely a dick in that debate. But sometimes, you know what, maybe that's what America wants.
And I think the hard part for Tim Kaine came for a fight tonight. And he really shouldn't have had to come for a fight tonight. But I think he also came for a fight after seeing the GOP. I'm sure somebody got fired, or maybe not, because they don't like to fire anybody in Trump land that does anything crazy. But
I fired Omarosa.
Right.
They fired a lot of people.
I fired Dennis Rodman.
Right.
Stop. You go ahead.
But I think that when the GOP kind of on the GOP.com or whatever the website came out and said that Mike Pence won the debate and they talked about Hillary Clinton scandals, I think that Tim Kaine automatically got in his head, wanted to come for a fight about anything that Mike Pence might have thrown at Tim Kaine about Hillary Clinton, but it turns out that Mike Pence couldn't even defend his own candidate on anything that was thrown out. And I don't want people to go away with thinking that Tim Kaine didn't come out prepared only on policy, because at the same time, every time that a question was asked, he used Donald Trump's policy, and he knew more about Donald Trump's policy than Mike Pence did.
Yes, and he quoted
every instance that Donald Trump said something about that actual policy. So I think that people have to take that away from this debate. It's like, he said it. Mike Pence? No, he didn't say it. Yes, he did. But he actually said it. And if you look it up, I think when people go back, obviously, the 5 people watching the debate tonight right in this room, that's what's going to end up, that's what people are going to look at. And
I really have no idea how you guys think he won on style. I did not think that at all. I think he was obnoxious. I thought it was obnoxious. His faces, all
You're talking about Tim Kaine's faces, or Mike Pence's face?
With the nodding and the laughing.
Look, that's what old white guys look like. We can't help it. All right.
No, that was a bit much. I'm really surprised to hear that you guys gave him the style brownie points.
I say style only because of the interrupting that Tim Kaine
I said Tim Kaine interrupted more.
If he'd waited his turn, I think it would have been fine.
But it goes back to what Christian said about Paul Ryan last year. If we were looking at a stylistic win from last year, or from 2012 debate. Paul Ryan won that debate on style because he did seem calmer. He might not have known everything, as he doesn't know more than Joe Biden. Mike Pence does not know more than Tim Kaine when it comes to actual domestic policy. That was very true.
That was one of the things where I'm like, oh, he's really not even going to answer the question. When the question was about what are you going to do to prevent homegrown terrorism, we went.
That's a good question.
Right. We did get pretty far off for a number of the topics.
Yeah, we did. But that
one
in particular.
Did anybody hear an answer to that? Because I heard straight international.
Right.
And again, this was one of the times when I was like, I'm really glad I wrote down the question, because we went way off and he never answered that question.
No, we actually said that when we were watching that. We're like, nobody even brought that up on the homegrown.
I had the UPS guy come knock on my door. My roommate opened the door. Then my dog ran out and chased him. So I had to go attend to that.
So what does the UPS guy think about homegrown terror? That's what our viewers want to know.
I think he's trying to make America great again, though.
I think that Stephen's dog was trying to find all of Mike Pence's answers, and that's why he ran out of the door.
It's so far from a major issue, but we heard about it so many times.
What?
Who here thinks that the American people in all 50 states are really concerned about the war on coal? Obviously,
I didn't even know
I understand. We heard about it a couple times.
Bring that
we
up?
heard about it so much, and look, I know it matters in Pennsylvania and
West
Virginia. It matters in some battleground states. I get it. You mentioned it, but it came up so much.
Yeah, I was like, what
and
is this thing?
Stephen, do you, as the voice of dissent, do you think, because Pence was the one who kept mentioning the war on coal, do you think it's an important issue? Do you think they didn't spend a lot of time on it. Yeah. We probably shouldn't, but it really annoyed me how often I heard the war on coal.
Yeah, and the regulations and stuff. I mean, I don't know the poll numbers for what people feel like coal is really suppressing their jobs and their growth and everything like that. But if the numbers are correct from the conservative side that it would create this many jobs by lifting all these regulations, I mean, I think that would be a good thing if we can do it in a safe way that's not going to kill our environment, because I actually do believe in science.
We hear a lot about clean coal, but I'm not a scientist, believe it or not.
I think that if the numbers were correct on creating jobs, the numbers should you should also point out the fact that people who do have cold jobs, those numbers are astronomically high in terms of medical bills, in terms of loss in family. So I think that when you say war on coal, it's almost like war on drugs, which I also don't particularly like that term.
Which nobody ever talked about
Right,
at
which
all.
nobody ever talked about. But I also don't think there was an opportunity for the moderator to actually bring that up because there was a lot of interrupting and there was a lot of non-policy talk from Mike Pence. But at the same time, that is a fundamental difference between Democrats and Republicans. And I talked about this with somebody at work the other day on coal. And I said, if you go out there and you tell a bunch of families that you want to train them in a job that's going to keep them alive a little bit longer, and you're going to create policy on that, then you take that opportunity because you want to do the best for your family, and that's what the Hillary Clinton plan and that's what the Democrats' plan is when it comes to folks in coal country. We all understand that we grew, there are families that only know one thing, but though that one thing is killing that family off. And that is what's happening in West Virginia. That's what's happening in Pennsylvania. That's what's happening in Kentucky. And those politicians know that. So what they do is they tell them, hey, we're going to kill you, and you don't get to buy into health care because you don't even have that opportunity to do that. And that's what Mike Pence isn't talking about. And Tim Kaine had that opportunity to bring that up when he talked about coal.
Early on in the debate, it came up that 60% of voters don't trust Hillary Clinton, to which Mike Pence said, of course they don't trust her because they're paying attention. Stephen, I'll start with you. Do you feel like that's an accurate description of Hillary and the reason behind it? Is it just that simple? They see her, she has a track record, and that's why they don't trust her.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when you look at the Clinton Foundation, when you look at like simple
Clinton
things,
Cash.
Clinton Cash. Yeah, when you look at simple things like,
He says something.
just lying about her health. She's been tracked and lied about a lot of things. That's mainstream media. So, her being a public servant for 30 years, I think that is affecting 60% of the nation because she's got her hands on our government.
You know what's simple? The basic math that Mike Pence could not do tonight with the Clinton Foundation, and he talked about how there were 80 people coming in from, or 80, he said more than half of people. Yeah. Mike Pence clearly does not know basic math about the Clinton Foundation when he says more than half, and the AP reported 80 people, and we all know that Secretary Clinton, who blogged the most miles around the world, had more than, 160 meetings,
So,
200 meetings.
Mike Pence also said
but
that
half of her meetings
Mike Pence
were
also
with
said that 10
foreign
cents on
donors.
the dollar actually went to charity. And I mean, he has to have that number from somewhere, whether it's accurate or not. I'd like to know more.
You wouldn't be the top-rated charity if that was really the spending.
Right.
I definitely agree with that.
And again, I don't think you can hold anything, talking about Clinton's trustworthiness comparing to Trump. I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's just a losing argument at this point now when you see everything that Trump has been
that's
involved
actually what I
with.
wanted to bring up, because the flip side of that was, I believe, 65% of Americans don't think Trump has the temperament, which he said otherwise last week, but don't think he has the temperament to be president. I think that Mike Pence probably has the temperament to be vice president. I think we saw that, but he's not at the top of the ticket. And do you think that he, in defense of his candidate, was able to assuage any of that 65% that maybe, do you think he was like, oh, well, I like Mike Pence, he's making a good argument, maybe I should take another look at this Trump fellow at donaldjtrump.com? No. Does anyone think that? Stephen?
He won in the Style Award, so in terms of temperament on that side, I think that definitely goes well.
I don't think on the either side. I don't think we're going to be gaining or losing votes for either side, really, from this VP debate. When it's all said and done, I really don't think we're changing
I guess
any
I was much
on
more
anyone.
impressed with Tim Kaine's performance, maybe, than anybody else here.
No. I don't want people to not to think that I wasn't impressed. I thought that Tim Kaine knocked it out of the park tonight.
I agree.
I just think that there were I think that, and somebody said to me, texted me about it right after, and said Mike Pence should have taken the Hillary Clinton route and probably just step back for a second and let Mike Pence dig himself into the hole.
He was
so
quick to interrupt. I do think that there were moments where and we pointed it out while we were watching the debate, if you had let Mike Pence continue to talk, that he would have done much more disservice than Tim Kaine jumping in.
It made it
Really?
worse for Tim
I don't
Kaine
think
to
so.
interrupt.
I feel like Mike Pence was well prepared.
I do think there were a few times that if he had gotten to talk more, there was a very specific question about defending something that Trump had said or a policy that he had, where Tim Kaine was just like, I got to jump in.
Kind of bailed him out with all these other accusations that he wanted to respond to. I feel like Mike Pence did I feel like both candidates were very prepared. I feel like Tim Kaine also did a good job, but I know all you guys will certainly cover that. So in terms of Mike Pence, I felt like he was very prepared, did a really good job, but also in terms of Hillary's untrustworthiness, prepared on everything, prepared on all the questions
He
tonight.
had the talking points down. He had bring up emails. Like he had
Yeah, so
That's what I'm
the
saying.
points.
I
but
felt
not
like
top
he
points.
wanted to respond to everything that Tim Kaine was alluding to on him, but I also felt like he came in with all the talking points in terms of her emails.
They were talking points, but they weren't a response to
they
what
weren't
the
answering
issue
the
was.
questions.
There was.
But I feel like he did his job, though.
Here's
I feel like that was his job tonight, and that's what he did.
I remember tweeting
Both
it out.
of them.
If the job is to avoid answering the question,
Right.
then I
Then
Tim
think
he
Kaine
did
did
all
the
that.
same thing in
No.
terms of going in and talking
Not-
about
that's
not nearly at the
Trump
same
called
level.
women dogs and pigs and stuff like that.
Yes.
That was never a question from Elaine.
But-
Tim Kaine made it a talking
but
point. So I
every
feel like
time
both
that-
people did that.
But every time that Tim Kaine talked about something that Donald Trump said, he always followed it up
did.
with
He
a Hillary
connected it.
Clinton policy that contradicted the Republican policy. You can't even talk about Donald Trump's policies because Mike Pence couldn't talk about Donald
Right, 'cause
Trump's
there
policies.
isn't, again.
And I said this tonight. I tweeted this out tonight. Mike Pence talked less about Donald Trump than Donald Trump did when he was introducing Mike Pence as his VP running mate.
I didn't think so. I didn't see it like that.
There was no time. There were very few times where Mike Pence brought up Donald Trump's name. If Tim Kaine did not bring up Donald Trump's name, so I don't think that Mike Pence was prepared to come out there and talk about Donald Trump. I think Mike Pence was coming out there to talk about Mike Pence and to set himself up for something later.
What? He didn't talk
Because-
about his own. He talked about his record
Exactly.
as a governor of Indiana.
Yep.
For like a glimpse,
That-
and compared his
Nope.
record to
To what?
Kane's record in Virginia.
Which, by the way, Kaine was governor during the recession, and Mike
Right.
Pence was governor
I
after
do
that. So there
think
was
that
a
there-
comparison
Yeah,
to that.
but I don't feel like Mike
So-
Pence was out there as like it was propaganda for Pence. And
I think Mike Pence should have prepared more about knowing where he was that night and who his running mate was than
I
more
saw
about
different-
Hillary
Well, in
Clinton.
terms of knowing where he was, he did indeed call the
That's true.
university the wrong name. I
Yes.
forget actually what
Norwood.
Norwood.
he called it
Yeah.
Norwood instead of Longwood, which it's only significant to the people in that room probably. Yes, it's a factual mistake, but I wonder how many people didn't
caught
need a
it.
little note right beforehand. Well, to be fair, Jeff Graham caught
Jeff
it. He
Graham
was
caught
watching
it.
with us. We just never would have imagined that something like that would happen. But look, there were a lot of things that stood out to me. And one of the things I wanted to sort of jump out because to reinforce my point that Tim Kaine definitely came off like a dick tonight was when Mike Pence was making the point about 9/11 and he was telling a personal story about he was in Washington, D.C. I was in Virginia. And like, okay, Timmy,
I was by the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Timmy, we get it. You were there. That's great. And, I think he handled it well. It's like, yeah, we all know where we were that day. And it's just like, he's just so overeager. It's like, you can make your point. You can even wait for him to finish, but to jump in, especially when somebody's talking about 9/11, it's the one that I wrote down because it was the most significant. It was the one that bothered me the most as I was watching it. But Stephen, was there any individual thing, or you just feel like it was a general thing about Tim Kaine that?
in regards to the 9/11.
Well, I'm like that's my example. I don't know. You may have the same example, but did that stand out? Did anything else stand out?
I mean, I think his biggest zinger of the night was you have your fired candidate and your hired candidate. I mean, that'll obviously be
that was decent.
That'll be real.
And I like
footage
that Mike Pence was like, "Oh, that was good. Did you work that out in a focus group?"
Yeah.
And here's
he's
the
been
thing,
saying
though.
it on the trail the whole
Well, yeah,
time.
they go back and forth. There were a few of those. It was like, "Oh, that was good. Did you spend a lot of time writing that?" Those were the moments where you're like, "See, why do you have to say that?" Of course, they spent a lot of time writing. He didn't write it. He had somebody write it for him. You know how it works, Mike Pence.
Right.
So,
I thought it was a great analogy where he talked about how Hillary Clinton was on the floor and trying to raise funds for the for 9/11.
While Donald Trump didn't pay taxes.
Yeah,
during
Donald Trump was fighting to
2001.
not
Yeah.
pay taxes
Can we
and stuff like
talk
that. I
about
thought that
that?
was nice that Tim
Please,
brought that
you
up.
have so many notes. I wanted to give you ample time, but yes, if you'd like to talk about paying taxes, please do.
Well, the question was, the
can pay
question
my
was,
taxes
is
if you
it
like.
fair that he didn't pay taxes? And Mike Pence's answer was that millions more are living in poverty now, and that this economy is struggling, which has nothing to do with whether it's fair that Trump has not paid taxes. He avoided paying taxes by taking business losses, and those were business losses that he decided to take. I mean, this is a really interesting question. Should I be able to decide, well, I would rather try all these things with my company, let them fail, or they fail because they just were never going to work, and then I don't get to pay anything for roads, police, military, or I take a chance, I have losses on my business, and I need to pay anyways.
I feel like you'd want to take that up with the people who wrote the tax code. I
So
feel like and
that's
Mike
a really
Pence,
good-
he had a decent response to it, saying that Trump is a businessman. He has a responsibility to the banks that have loaned him money and to his investors to pay those loans back. So in terms of being a businessman,
he doesn't take
for him to
that-
do that, he only used the laws.
He doesn't take that
He
seriously,
didn't do
paying people
anything
back because
outside the laws.
he went bankrupt so many times.
Okay.
So here's the thing, though: if that was really what he believed, that the tax laws are broken and he knows them better than anyone, why isn't it from on DonaldJTrump.com from day one that this is a loophole that he's going to fix? Instead, what's on the website is tax breaks for the rich. So I think this whole thing about, well, I'm just a brilliant genius, is a really just great way to avoid and manipulate. I mean, just the mind effing that's going on with him and this defense of the taxes is on a whole new level. If that was really his joy to fix the tax problems, he would have told you from the beginning. This isn't like a secret thing that he needs to.
I feel like when you see a headline of like Trump claimed $1 billion loss and didn't pay taxes on it, I mean, that is very alarming to a lot of people. But then when you look at, he used the net operating loss law to do that. In a sense, that is good. That's legal, good business.
But hold on, we're now
So
on to the
I don't
second
feel like
thing.
he would go and advocate that, because I feel like a lot of people will see the headline and think exactly what you're thinking, like, oh, he's scamming the government and he's not paying any taxes.
He didn't even need to wait till that came out. That could have been part of his tax policy from the beginning. I know of loopholes that exist, and I'm going to close
He's
these
said
ones.
that at a lot of
Why
rallies.
isn't it on
He
Donald
hasn't.
J. Trump?
No.
He
He
hasn't.
has
So your argument
Why
is, why isn't it on the website?
Hold
But
on.
he's,
Yeah.
if you watch his rallies, he talks about that all the time.
Yes, and I would just like to point out.
He
just
talks about,
mentions it.
I know the tax codes, I know all the tax, no one knows them better than me, I've used them.
But he doesn't say which ones loopholes
Right.
he's going to close, what he would change exactly, just that he
I think
knows.
he
it's
says
a
like the
loophole.
carrot
I was just going to
interest,
say, you know, I
and
watched
then-
a
Just
Trump,
to lower tax rates
I
is
had
the
watched
only
a-
thing he's talked
the
about.
carrot
Trump
interest.
rally the other day, and
Did you lose a bet?
Your face, I love that.
And you know, Donald Trump said something that everybody knows. He says, "I've never written a tax law in my life." Or a tax, you know, he doesn't know how to do anything.
And do we think that he
Right.
was
So-
a brilliant
Exactly.
genius
Why
that came
would
up
he-
with
So-
these?
Accountant.
But he actually said that on the stage. I've never written tax code in my life. Well, we know, genius. So I don't think that the American people should trust somebody that has no clue about how to write tax law, that has no clue about the law, that has every clue about how to avoid the law. So I think that when you're talking about trust and unfavorables and all that stuff, you got to actually look at what the guy is saying.
And then the balls
to get away with it.
to
But
tweet
he's
about how
used the
half of
laws.
Americans don't pay taxes and that the rest of us
Yes.
are tired of carrying them. Well, I'm tired of carrying Donald Trump.
But, okay, he used the laws in terms of being like
We're not-
trustworthy. You look at Hillary Clinton, who
And then he
created
are
this
you not
clever
listening?
foundation on how to gain donations from foreign
Okay,
governments.
so you know what else I
Wow.
would have liked to talk about
Go
during the
ahead.
debate tonight? We spent far too much time talking because I'm tired of Steve. We spent far too much time talking about Russia. We spent about 20
Yes,
minutes
we
talking
did. I
about
wrote
Russia,
that down.
which
much
I
time
don't
on
think,
Russia.
Yeah.
that boded well for the Trump campaign, because any focus on Russia will always bring up Paul Manafort, Corey
Right.
any
And
Trump.
Putin's a great
Putin's
leader.
a great leader.
And Mike
comments.
Pence did not have a great because he talked about Donald Trump being
He talks
small
about
and
the
bullying.
point that they have is the reset. And,
Right.
you know, how did the
Yeah.
reset go for
But
you? But
his
I understand
answer
your point.
on Vladimir Putin has been very different on Trump's message on Vladimir Putin from day one of his campaign. And Tim Kaine, disappointingly, had an opportunity to bring up, when they talked about domestic issues, had a ample opportunity to bring up Mike Pence's record on LGBT
Yes, I was
rights
disappointed
in
about that
America.
too, that he
If
did
you're going to
not.
talk about this man's record,
Yeah.
you talk about what he has,
Yeah.
how many families and how many lives he has destroyed from his tax breaks and tax cuts in Indiana, from his laws in Indiana on LGBT rights. You talk about the things that actually matter because that is actually on his record. And Tim Kaine did say, you voted for it, it's on your record. That's why they couldn't talk about the Iraq war vote tonight. Neither of them brought it up because
Right.
both of them voted for it.
Right,
So if
exactly.
anybody talked about it,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have,
I mean, that would have been a decent question from the moderator
Right.
to ask about it.
Saying,
which-
I was hoping
again,
that
I
he
feel
would.
like
I'm
she
saying,
did-
like,
she mostly
there
did a
are
good job,
areas-
but that was definitely something she should have brought
I was
up.
disappointed that he didn't when they talked about
they couldn't
social
talk about
issues.
TPP either because they both agree
Yes,
with it.
they do.
Momentarily, we'll talk about social issues that they did talk about, but I wanted to get some quotes from the chat room. If you are indeed watching on YouTube, please join in and chat with us. Lauren McLeod said she was disappointed that no one was sniffing. I agree. That actually added a lot. One of our biggest fans, Kim Kurzatowski, she liked Tim Kaine calling Pence, quote, Trump's apprentice, which I do think that was nice. You know, they don't always land the way that both Hillary and Tim Kaine think they will, but they are very good at coming up with things like the "you're hired" campaign, "you're fired" campaign, and you know what? That's good campaigning.
If you don't know the difference between a dictator and a leader, you should go back to fifth grade.
And you know,
That was another good one.
It's really hard to debate somebody when that person thinks their running mate is somebody completely different. And that's what Mike Pence was tonight. He thought, I truly believe, he doesn't know Trump's policy, and he believes that his running mate has somebody completely different and probably should be at the top of the ticket.
There was a moment when they were talking about Social Security. Mike Pence said, there they go again. Mike Pence, look, we get it. You love Reagan. Don't steal his lines. Come on.
But Reagan's son came out and said Reagan wouldn't have voted for Trump.
And he said
Or
neither
Nancy
would-
Reagan.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I mean, you know, if we were doing the more normal show that wasn't a post-debate show, we could talk about how Barbara Bush, not 41's wife, but the 43's daughter, was at a Hillary Clinton event over the weekend. I think that, you know, there's probably not any real love lost between those two families, considering that Trump is still campaigning against George W. Bush for some reason that I don't
You mean
quite...
Jeb Bush? And Jeb Bush, too.
Yeah, but George W.
I'm
Bush
sorry,
and his
but when you
record.
said
You
Jeb,
mean
I
Jeb
could see there was
exclamation point?
not an exclamation point. So you have to say it properly. So, you know, they did get to social issues. Well, one in particular, really, they basically got to the idea of faith and how it impacts.
Who could out-religious the other is what I felt like when I was watching that.
I feel like Pence wanted to say, like, you know what, he got to the sanctity of life, the pro-life issue, which, you know, is something that it's a very volatile, hot-button issue, but it doesn't come up as often during the campaign. Donald Trump himself has clearly changed his opinion on this, just like he's changed his party registration. So I don't know. Do you think that they handled the issue well in terms of both stating their points? Obviously, I don't think either one of them is changing anyone's mind on that issue. No. But do you think that they made people feel like they will handle it the way, well, you know, not them, but their administration will handle it the way that the law dictates? Stephen, do you think they handled the abortion issue well? Both. I
think both of them did in respect to their religious views and how they personally feel. I mean, it's a very subjective argument. It's a personal issue. I feel like Mike Pence,
Wait, but the
he's
question
a
was
Christian.
objectively, do you go with your religion or the law?
So I feel like Mike Pence, in terms of his decision to be pro-life, comes from his Christian values, and that's the way that he wants to obey it. But I mean, I agree with Tim Kaine in terms of I am pro-choice, but when I was elected into office in Virginia, I agreed to take the oath and uphold the law, and I love that. I agree with him in that
I do
sense.
think that they used the issue well. Mike Pence used the issue well when he's like, well, you know, Tim, we know that you were not in favor of federal funding for abortion, but your boss Hillary is. So he was able to actually get some political points on that. But how do you, Scott, how do you feel that they both handled the issue? Do you think that they both basically made their base feel like, yeah, okay, this guy's got our interests?
I do. I think what Stephen said, I think if you're going after your base, you went after your base, and Tim Kaine did it, and Mike Pence did that as well. So those people that are very anti-abortion and pro-life and everything else are going to feel like, yeah, Mike Pence threw the red meat at them, and it was, you know, what they wanted to hear. And I thought Tim Kaine did it but I agree with Tim Kaine's side obviously more, because I agree there's a separation of church and state. So.
Yeah, and even
that's
not for their base, but even like if you're a Gary Johnson supporter,
right,
and you see one candidate say,
are there still Gary Johnson supporters?
Yeah, there
there's
actually
2%. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
Still some.
No, they higher than that. Jill Stein's at 2%. He's up like 5, 6, 7.
He's
Yeah.
around 7 right now.
But
know,
what he
down.
said, and
There's people who still go to Nickelback concerts, so what do I know? Anyway, to your point.
and this is
sorry.
just ironic that Tim Kaine's answer was, I have my beliefs.
Right.
I believe in those strongly for myself, and I also know that sometimes my job, the law, what I must uphold is something different, and I have to honor and respect that. And it's not the role of government to, for example, get into the personal life of a woman to make that choice.
Which-
We should
right, which-
trust
which-
her to
right,
make that choice herself. So I thought that was good, because if you're all these people who say that they're fiscally conservative and socially
liberal.
would resonate with that answer.
Yeah, I did. I did. I thought that was his zinger of the night, saying you can be pro-life, but your Christian values shouldn't be mandated on everyone else.
Yeah.
And I think that should
I
be
thought that-
we
I
agree
think
with
that's
that.
very true.
But I think there are people like Christian was saying, the ones that are ardent anti-abortion and pro-life. I think Pence threw that at them, and that definitely appealed to that base. If you're just going on making the argument, I think Pence did that well.
He's
Even though I don't
making
agree
the
with
point
it.
about what they refer
Right.
to as partial birth abortions is definitely, that's definitely
Right,
like,
it's
don't worry, base,
controversial.
we know.
Right.
Yeah, so.
And I think that should have been the opportunity when he did bring up women's rights to choose, and
Right.
Tim Kaine used two examples. He used the death penalty and he used abortion in his decision making as governor of Virginia. That should have been the moment where he attacked Mike Pence on LGBT rights.
Yes,
that should have been the moment where he attacked Mike Pence on women's rights in Indiana. Because
Well,
if you're
that's what I
going
did want to get
if you're
to.
going to cut
Agreed.
funding for Planned Parenthood out of Indiana, if you're going to cut marriage equality out of Indiana because you don't feel like following the law, because you feel like following your faith first, that's a problem.
Right.
How
No,
much-
I absolutely agree with you on that one.
How much
which
of
he
a
didn't.
problem is it for the ticket that it is Mike Pence? Talk a little bit about some of the, they're not LGBTQ friendly decisions that he's made. So talk a little bit about, how this is really a weak area, and maybe if Tim Kaine had asked you, Drexel, what you would have said. Here's what you say. Here's how you go after them on these issues.
I think when it comes to this kind of stuff, when it comes to debates like this, you have to talk about record. And at the end of the day, Mike Pence's record on the actual issues, like we just talked about a litany of where they agree. There were plenty of times in the debate where Mike Pence said, I agree. There were plenty of debate
At the risk of agreeing.
At the risk of
Right.
Let me say I agree.
Right.
Yes.
There were plenty of times in the debate last
Community
week where
policing,
Donald
yay.
Trump agreed with, tonight was the first time I feel like I've ever heard a Republican other than Rand Paul say the words criminal justice reform. And Mike Pence said it just probably so he could throw it out somewhere.
So he can say tomorrow that he talked
that he
about
talked
it.
about
Yeah,
criminal justice
exactly.
reform. So I think when it comes to attacking somebody, I think, like I said, you just have to look at Mike Pence's record. And Tim Kaine knew the answer. I just think I think that after a while of him interrupting, I think that he just kind of
Ran out of gas.
Kind of gave up the attack mode at a certain point, and then kind of tried to reel it back in.
Well, I feel like
I
Mike
was
Pence's
disappointed with that, though. I
argument to
agree.
attack Tim Kaine's candidate would have been the foreign donations that she's received from Saudi Arabia, a country that slaughters and murders Christians and gay people.
But that's another. It's kind
Well,
of like
he did talk
tangential.
about. I know he didn't talk about it in that respect. He did
But I'm
talk
saying
about all
if
the
he was
foreign
going
money.
to-
But that has nothing to do
That
with
would have been a great
religion.
shot
The question
for him
was
to do.
religion.
Take out the
social
Christian,
issues.
take
We're
out the
talking about
Christian
social issues
part
at
of
that
it.
point.
How they slaughter and murder gay people.
I think that there's obviously fundamental differences in these tickets.
But then
There are
Trump wants
so
to give them
many.
nuclear weapons?
But
I mean, that's...
I
Where do
think
you go
that
with
Mike
that?
Pence summed it up very well, and it was something that there was some laughter in the trailer when he said it, but it definitely reinforces the point as to why people support Donald Trump.
I don't think people know that we watched it in a
I
trailer.
know, I was going to say that too, because they're like, what?
It's
Trailer?
gonna sound.
We were watching...
Let's just say there was one
the
big
debate.
casting couch, no pictures.
Oh my God, that's so terrible because everybody's gonna. Never mind.
Chelsea wasn't
And
there.
he's just digging,
I
digging and
disavow that. I
You
was
just
at home
missed out.
watching the
Mike
debate
Pence
tonight.
spends a lot of time on his knees, so he might have been.
He
at
did
that
say
debate.
that. He
Yeah,
did.
keep it clean. Keep it clean.
I resisted writing down 50
Yes.
different jokes. What he did say is that Mr. Trump is not a polished politician like you and Hillary Clinton.
But Putin will respect
and the point
himself,
is,
too.
Well, the point is, yes, obviously. But, Stephen, I think you would probably agree that people who do like Donald Trump, one of the things that they like most is, no, he's not a polished politician.
Yeah,
he doesn't have all the lines, tested out by focus groups. It might work against him because he throws the lines out in front of thousands of people. But I think you would agree that is
I think I totally agree, and I think her unfavorable numbers come from, again, the foreign donations,
They
the
don't come
tens
from
of
that.
They don't come from
millions
that.
of dollars
And actually, her
They don't come
that have
from
been
are lower than
sunken
Trump's.
into
I
the
think
Clinton
I think
Foundation.
those unfavorable
Trump's
Half of her
from
meetings
Stephen
as
Hall.
Secretary
That
of
has nothing to do
State
with that.
were with all these foreign
Half
donors.
of those meetings?
No.
60 companies that lobbied the government have also donated to the Clinton Foundation. I think that's what
so
people are
basically
frustrated
what
with.
you're saying is
the
the
Clinton
secretary.
Foundation and
So
Trump
basically,
Foundation.
so basically, what you're saying,
Not a
Secretary
winning
of State
argument.
travels around the world, has to meet people in different foreign countries. Probably shouldn't do that because other countries are donating to her foundation. I think that I think that you're missing the point of being Secretary of State. I think
I think that we're missing the
And
point
that's
that
not
they
what the people
created
in
the
favor of
foundation
coming from.
to allow
I
foreign
think that- here's
donors
the thing,
to
Stephen.
get in
Here's
for
the
a
thing,
pay for
Stephen.
play in terms
Like-
of
here's the
U.S.
thing, here's the thing,
politics.
Stephen. Like Mike Pence, you can't seem to agree with any policy from the Republican side or Donald Trump. So while we sit up here and talk about the policies of Hillary Clinton that we actually do agree with, and not talk about Clinton Cash because you seem to be the only one to do that, unlike Donald Trump.
Actually, I think a lot of people are talking
Mike
about
Pence
the
isn't
Clinton
talking about it.
Foundation.
Donald Trump's not talking about it. Republicans on the Hill aren't talking about it. You seem to be the only
They know
Republican
not to.
right now in
Well,
America.
if you turned
actually
off
talking about it.
MSNBC for 10 minutes, you'd
I
actually
switch
see
over-
that
I
a
switch
lot
over-
of other stations
Sean
are
Hannity,
talking
Sean
about
Hannity
this.
doesn't talk about it.
Call
He actually
Sean
talks
Hannity.
about
What are you
it.
talking about?
So
Sean Hannity talks about it all the
No, he
time.
doesn't talk about it because
So does
you're
CNN, so does Anderson
you're
Cooper.
the only
CNN
one
doesn't.
talking about it.
One of the more awkward moments for Mike Pence was, look, there were a few times that they both strong-armed in some talking points, some buzzwords. They wanted to have a soundbite or two. When Mike Pence basically stopped the debate cold to talk more about cyber warfare and talk about Hillary Clinton and her classified server, which, as we said last week, is a point that Trump definitely should have made. Yeah. He had a moment. So clearly it was like, all right, you got to get this in there because we did a bad job on it. And look, they both did it. But, well, I'll go to Scott. What do you think about sort of going back into the classified emails and, to keep it a bipartisan criticism? How many times did we get it? He didn't pay taxes. He doesn't want to pay taxes.
Right.
There were so many times that it was mentioned. It was like, okay, do you have anything else? Because I'd like to hear that too. But to this point,
I mean, that's typical debate. You're going to edge in and you're going to try to stick with these talking points that you think are going to work and
right,
hammer
because
out
most
the
people
points.
probably didn't watch all 90 minutes or however.
Well, but you're just going to hammer out the point again.
Yeah.
I mean, they made the same lines a few times there, and that's just trying to get back at the basis, talking about the emails whenever they can, talking about Trump not paying taxes, and that's typical debate move, and that wasn't necessarily surprising to me. I mean, it is that's what they do.
Chelsea, both candidates threw around the term insult-driven campaign. Do you feel like that's accurate from both sides?
Yes.
You can feel that the insults are founded more for one person, but I do believe there are indeed a lot of insults being thrown around.
But
normal, too.
I do think it's very normal that the candidates will insult each other, but I think it's a new thing where the candidates insult the American public as much. I know the basket of deplorable things is like one, but I mean, just myself, Mexican, so I must be a rapist.
You're
or
also a
criminal.
Mexican thing, if you remember.
Yes, absolutely.
How about the Bernie basement bombs?
Oh, we can
That
talk
was
about that.
that was
No,
nothing.
I am
negative.
No
well
offense taken.
prepared in talking about that.
I actually,
let's let
I
Chelsea
actually
finish her
agree with
point
Hillary
and then-
Clinton on that.
That wasn't
little
negative.
comment.
It wasn't a
Right.
bad thing.
What else? I don't know what he could probably call
But
me.
a lot of people think it was a
pig.
bad
What
thing.
would
No,
he
it
call
wasn't
me?
worded
Miss
badly.
Housekeeping because I'm a woman and Mexican.
Miss Piggy?
Probably, but I don't think he'd call you Miss Piggy.
Right.
Because you're not a fat pig. That's what he reserves
Okay,
it for.
so
yeah.
okay, I'm safe because I'm
Yeah,
thin. Thank
yeah.
God.
So he called someone overweight, which is not okay. 20 years ago, Hillary Clinton has shamed
20 years
women.
ago, he just talked about
for
Rosie
sexual
O'Donnell.
affairs.
Rosie
What are you
O'Donnell.
talking about? He's just talking about.
We're
now.
talking about Angela or Anseli Machado or whatever. This was
Alicia
20.
Machado,
Alicia
'cause
Machado.
obviously you don't know like Trump does.
Yeah, this was
Here's the
20
thing.
years
No,
ago.
it wasn't even
Let's
20
talk about
years.
Hillary Clinton
Hold
and
on,
women.
hold on,
How she
stop,
shamed
hold on.
people. How she
No,
found
he
the
doesn't.
FBI and CIA after these women that came forward with these
But
sexual
this is
affairs with Bill
You
Clinton.
You will never get away
talking
from the
about
fact
Roger
that
Stone?
all
No, where are you
Mexicans.
getting that from?
Rogers, I think he's following Roger Stone on Twitter.
He is.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Donald Trump said his thing about Alicia Machado like 3 or 4 days ago because he tweeted it out
Right.
about how she gained weight. So
At
when you're
3 in the
talking
morning.
about 20 years
Because it
ago,
got brought up again.
But he brought
He
it
brought
up
it
again.
back again. He can't let
He
it
didn't
go.
bring it up again.
He
Yes,
did
he
bring
did.
it up
He could
again.
let it go.
And I'm not
sorry.
saying it's
I think
okay.
you
I'm
should
not
spend-
saying
I think
that's
you should spend
okay.
less
I'm just
time-
saying let's
I
talk about
think-
Hillary Clinton and
Well,
women too.
Here's the
Look,
thing.
what-
I think you should
Let's
spend
see
less-
both sides of the
I
coin.
think you should spend less time watching Donald Trump scripted rallies and more time watching his 3 a.m. tweets because then you actually get the real
person.
Donald Trump. Because obviously you don't know what candidate you're supporting anyway. So
Obviously, you don't want to
brought up
see
Rosie.
anything that Hillary Clinton does that doesn't bode well for you.
No
How about
candidate
her?
is
How about her
perfect. No
shaming all
candidate is
these women?
perfect.
how about Shane? Where do you?
That's
Where do
your
you get the
that's your reasoning. No
I'm
candidate
saying
is
you're
perfect.
talking- I'm saying
Hold on.
nobody's
The whole
perfect.
argument is
Hold
on.
Trump
We've
is
lost
Trump
control.
against
We have lost
women. Like,
control.
let's
So
talk
no,
about the
no,
other
hold on, hang
side.
on one
I just
second.
want
Let
to
you
address.
ask the question
I just want to
and
address.
Stephen will
I just
answer.
want to address this because I No, I am not a woman, and neither is Stephen, even though he acts like it sometimes.
Okay.
Wow. That's
Insulting campaign.
But I think
Insulting campaign.
That-
It's okay.
Words
You know.
hurt, Drexel.
All right.
Words
I know
hurt.
they
Not
do.
at all, actually. Not from
Donald
Drexel.
Trump winning the election is going to hurt even more. But I think that when it comes to women being cheated on, I think that the natural reaction for a woman is to do a couple things. A, you're going to be a real bitch at some point, and B, you have a choice. Either you're going to stick by your marriage and work through it, or you are going to scorn that person. And Hillary Clinton made a personal choice to stick with her husband. Yes.
Yeah, instead of scorning her,
no.
her husband, she scorned the woman.
Here's the thing, though, is that those are specific people. Trump has insulted
And they aren't
groups
right
of
either.
people. Did you know,
Sure, she
Drexel, you're
scorned her
living in
husband,
hell
too.
because you're black? All people are living in
Right.
hell.
I'm
So
just
that's
a
what I'm saying about the insults.
To Stephen's point,
And
what
I'm not
you're
disagreeing
talking
with
about
that, but thank you for at least talking about the other side of the coin for 2 seconds.
Stephen's point is there are accounts from Juanita Broderick is the one that comes to mind. She'll talk about that it wasn't just what happened with Bill Clinton, it was how actively involved Hillary Clinton was. And yes, these are obviously
Right.
a personal account. So you do have this issue, but it I don't know. How significant do you think it is, Stephen? Because it gets dismissed pretty quickly. Do you think people care, basically, about Juanita Broderick's story? Let's just say it's 100%
I think
true,
people do
which I
care,
don't
but
know
it
that I
was
do think that, but
a while ago, and
Yeah.
this is so fresh, and this is being brought to light right this second. But I think it's important for people to know. I think that we're looking at people's track record. I think we're looking at people's history, and
Let's
that's
see
all
what-
I'm saying to do. I'm not discrediting some awful statements that Trump has made. That's not to take away from that. I'm saying, let's just see both sides of the coin.
We are seeing both
We
sides.
are,
Again,
and there's
you
big
Yeah, but when we
differences
bring
there.
it up, it's
No,
complete
here's the
denial.
thing.
It's complete
You-
dismissiveness.
No.
You don't even acknowledge it.
denial.
Where
And you're
in
saying,
public,
No
where
denial.
in public have you ever seen Hillary Clinton come out about those women? Where in public, other than somebody's hearsay story, have you ever seen on tape Hillary Clinton ever say anything about Monica Lewinsky, anything say about Jennifer Flowers?
I've never seen $1 million,
Anything-
but I know it's real.
But what we're saying is, we've seen Donald Trump and his
Surrogates and people, yep.
talk about people in America.
Drexel,
You've
where there's
never
smoke, I know where you're
seen-
going with this. Where there's smoke, there's fire. I've never seen $1 million cash, but I know it's real. And if there's
okay.
enough
Okay.
allegations, there's enough
So anyway,
testimonies.
There's another point
Why
today-
else would
there's
all
another
these women
point
come
today-
forward?
Before Drexel moves on, if you
'Cause I
work
have
for
to
the
move on
Clinton
every
Foundation,
Why would Hillary
you
Clinton
definitely
go on
would have seen
tape
$1 million.
There was another
She has
point
pawns
today.
for
there was
that.
another okay. So anyway, there was another point today that that Mike Pence brought up, talking about immigration, which again he cannot defend Donald Trump on.
Exactly.
And I thought it was very funny. He didn't even
not
bring
a
it up.
strong
He actually,
topic
he
for
actually
Donald
didn't
Trump.
even mean to bring it up, but I thought it was so funny that he said it when he said, "Let's welcome the children of the world," considering that his candidate and his immigration policies aren't so inviting to children of the world.
Those children
especially
are
in
losers.
So I think that once again, you're starting to see the real Donald Trump and you're starting to see the real Mike Pence, because every time they say something, it's contradictory to what they do.
To backpedal for a moment, and Tim Kaine made the point after Hillary's basket of deplorables comment, he's pointed out she apologized, and there again another fundamental difference between these candidates. Donald Trump does not apologize for very much. I can't think of things that I'm sure someone can tell me some that he has. Great. He usually doubles down and gets very defensive, usually on 3 a.m. on Twitter. And I think that definitely bespeaks to the temperament that 65% of Americans are troubled by. I lost this. I should have written down a comment that I saw earlier, but that's my mistake because I looked up and I'm like, well, now it's gone. You guys are just chatting too much, but we love having you there in the chat. We've got a few more minutes, so if you want to jump in over there on YouTube, please do. But if not, if you're listening after the fact, please tweet us at TrumpHillary16. Now, Chelsea, you have so many notes there. I feel like there has to be one thing you're burning, maybe even one or two, but if something comes to mind, please share with us, because I wish I could get a shot of these notes because
I had
they
to
make
write-
mine look ridiculous.
I know mine too are
I was
terrible.
putting my
Yeah.
transcription skills to work. I thought what was kind of alarming was this whole idea that we are going to get the world to respect us, Putin to respect us, because we're going to demonstrate strength. We got to rebuild our military, which spend more money, and all about the appearance of strength and the perception of law and order abroad and here. and it's kind of scary. It's ineffective. It's a hawkish way to look at the world, and even our own countries kind of like want to militarize our own country, and that is kind of scary to me. I am in this case very lucky that even though I am as Mexican as I am white, that I look white, because if I looked Mexican, I would be afraid of a Trump, stop and frisk, all over the world, or the country, I should say. I mean, thankfully he can't do that exactly because he doesn't run the states. But the way he talks, it would be like he would implement that. And then it just sounds like he wants to instigate war around the world. We got to show him we're tough and strong and blast them. And it's just, that's not where I want to go. And I don't think it's going to make us safe. And with security and fear being the thing that's most of concern to Americans, I think it's the really wrong way to go. And I think Pence made it painfully clear that that's their stance, is just be very hyper aggressive. And it made me less of, if it was possible, of a Trump Pence fan. And I just don't see how anybody, and I can see white America feels very safe, but the rest of us, or who fear for, some of my family members who don't look as white as I do, I'm afraid for them.
Right. And I tell minorities all the time, I'm like, I think what people have to remember, especially when you're voting, is that you're not only voting the two people at the top of the ticket. You're also voting for them to choose their cabinet officials who are actually running the policy.
And the Supreme Court.
I mean, the Supreme Court's a little bit different, but I'm talking about actual. It is a huge thing. Right. I'm talking actual cabinet positions. So, for example, excuse me, Loretta Lynch. There has only been one Justice Department that has really turned the tables on criminal justice reform as best as they can in these past couple of years, as the Eric Holder's Loretta Lynch
Except they never went after anybody at the bank.
You're right. Well,
I know.
I'm more talking about to what you're talking about in terms of feeling safe.
Justice.
Yeah. I think that there is too great a risk in appointing a Chris Christie as Attorney General, or Rudy Giuliani as
Jesse Ventura,
or as Homeland Security. These people that that Donald Trump or Mike Mullen, who's been out there stoking fear in the American people, those are the types of people that Donald Trump is going to appoint in those cabinet positions. And so you think that we are fearful now? We are always going to be fearful, because that is what Republicans have done over the past 2 or 3 decades, is stoke fear in the American people to keep them locked up in some sort of crazy whirlwind. And that's the Republican mantra.
It's the Republican way. It's true.
Now, for those of you who can't imagine having to wait a whole week to have us back with you, don't worry. We're going to be back on Sunday, because Sunday night is the second presidential debate. I believe this one, they said where it was, and it's
somewhere in the Midwest.
Missouri. It's in Missouri. And then the third one will be in Las Vegas, where apparently we will not be.
Viva! I will.
Well, you'll be staying at the Trump.
I'm trying to get a camera and a mic, so we'll see.
That's good. That'd be great. We would appreciate that.
He'd be able to walk through freely.
Yeah,
well, because he doesn't look like you guys.
Right. That's why we're not going. We feel safer in Los Angeles.
So we'll
jump the wall at a Clinton rally. You might get arrested.
We'll be here after the debate at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern. So make sure you look for us then on Sunday night. And then the subsequent 10 days later, that Wednesday will be the next show. And then eventually we'll get back into our usual time slot. And before you know it, it's going to be Election Day.
Right.
And, well, that'll be a fun show, no matter what happens. I'm looking forward to that night. But we appreciate everybody in the chat room. There were some great comments from last time, but I know we're almost out of time. So I'll just point out, Lady Goth 12 said, "Oh, you all look so snazzy." Chelsea, gorgeous as always. And Carolyn Spencer said people should stay in Trump's hotel and not pay because his staff didn't do a good job. And
no, but the housekeepers.
Well,
leave them a tip.
You tip the housekeepers.
Cash.
Exactly. I always tip them cash.
And finally, Lawrence Bakery says, "Am I the only one that gets a Jonestown vibe from all the Trumpers? It is astounding the amount of delusion these people live with."
Yes.
Yes, I agree with that. It's a little scary.
But if you disagree, please tweet us.
Mindfucker Commander-in-Chief.
Or Willie Horton style ads that the Republicans are running against Democrats. So
I even saw Trump ads in California.
Wow,
Did you guys see that?
That's a waste of money.
It's funny you mentioned Willie Horton, and we'll wrap it up in a second. I heard someone make the comparison. I wish I could think of who it was that I would attribute this to, but saying that the way that Donald Trump is running his campaign was basically if Mike Dukakis was riding in the tank and he got all the bad press. He would then get back in the tank. He'd have Willie Horton in the tank with him, and he'd drive the tank across country. I thought that was a great way to sum up the way that Trump is handling his criticism. Anyway, we are at Trump Hillary 16. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. Rate, comment, like, all that good stuff. On the couch of dissent, Mr. Stephen Helmkamp at Stephen Helmkamp. At the edge of the desk, Scott Moore at SMan80, Drexel Heard at Drexel Heard, Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia. I'm Christian Bladt at Christian DMZ, and we will see you next Sunday night, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern. See you then. Thanks, everybody.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.